One, two, three.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear National Parks. Happy birthday to you. How old are you?
100!
How old are you?
100!
How old are you?
100!
Happy birthday to you.
What we're doing is celebrating the 100th birthday of the National Park System by looking at it through the lens of this incredibly historic moment that happened here in the fields of Chalmette, what is arguably one of the most consequential battles in American history. This is not only the historical memory of America, it's the natural memory of America. It is our way of finding out who we are. Ken Burns calls the national parks the best idea, and what it was a simple trust from one generation to the next, one century to the next, that people who came after us would realize how extraordinary this continent was and how different from a natural standpoint, but also from our historical standpoint, that our ancestors who sacrificed so much would be eternally remembered.
They're the custodians of the site where one of the most important battlefields in our country is located. It's the battle that really used to be a national holiday until the Civil War, because no one expected us to defeat the best army in the world, the British, the same people that had defeated Napoleon. And they were stopped here in New Orleans, not just by our army, but by our citizens, black and white, Native Americans, even Baratarian pirates were part of the story. And it's really a remarkable sight that a group of armed citizens, came together, supplemented by the Navy and the regular army, and defeated the army that had beaten Napoleon and drove him out of France. This is really a national heirloom that we need to pass on to future generations. This is not just sacred land. It is, because this is where we had Americans spill blood in defense of our country. But it is a place where people can truly experience the American story. And it's one thing to learn something out of a book, but it's another to go on the site, stand on the same field as our forefathers, and you have a much greater appreciation of what transpired when you're there. And this park's very important to our story. Most people don't realize this, but the War of 1812 was originally called the Second War of American Independence. So, while most people have forgotten the War of 1812, at the time it was considered very important, and even if you look at it historically, while it may not enjoy the same prominence as World War II or the Civil War, if you look at the consequences had that war gone a different way, they would have been dramatic and would have changed this country's history.
It's important for all children to understand how Mother Nature came about, and the history of how our country came about. But more importantly, we're celebrating it because you got 100 years of our government maintaining the facilities over that 100 years, and now we're at a point where we're $12 billion in the hole, because now the parks have to maintain the infrastructure, the bridges and the roads, and our government is spending a lot of money in foreign countries, but they're not spending enough money in our country maintaining those things that give us the history of our country.
We have some wonderful dignitaries here to help celebrate this incredible birthday with you. Amongst them, from the Miro Foundation, which has given so much to it, Chris Haynes. Give him a round of applause. The assessor of Orleans Parish, who himself was a park ranger and is a major advocate for the park system and for the activities that we do to try to keep the memory of the Battle of New Orleans alive, Errol Williams. And the man who is the coordinator for all 1812 activities, amongst his many other responsibilities for St. Bernard Parish, former councilman Michael Baham. And I will introduce Mike to say a few words.
Thank you, Chris. Isn't everything better with cake? So, well, thank you all for coming here, and this is a very important day. I'd like to thank Chris, General Villeray, future Governor Villeray, for giving y'all a fantastic tour and retelling the Battle of New Orleans. There's a lot of history that was made on this land, not just with the Battle of New Orleans in 1815, but since then. As Chris mentioned, I'm a former councilman, but more importantly for this occasion, I'm a history enthusiast. And since 2003, I've worked alongside the National Park Service officials, leaders of the Living History Foundation, the Marrow Foundation, on making sure that we are able to celebrate and commemorate the heroes that served here through battle reenactments. That's basically like you would see in the movies. They have the soldiers shooting at each other. Well, we do that every year here, and it shows you how they fought the battle 200 years ago. And I'm very proud of the work the National Park Service has done, and I'm honored to stand here and to wish one of St. Bernard Parish's most important community partners a happy 100th birthday. A century ago, President Woodrow Wilson signed into law the National Park Service Organic Act. We celebrate the anniversary of that historic event today. Our national parks are treasures, each containing a story about the foundation of our nation, historic events, and natural wonders. You know, some of our parks have canyons, some of them have waterfalls and rivers, some of them have buffalo. Have any of y'all ever seen a buffalo before? Yeah, it's kind of neat. They're big, but they sneak up on you, so you got to be careful. But you go to Yellowstone, I remember standing there, had a buffalo sneak up right on me. Then a few hours later, I saw a giant grizzly bear running around. Now, we don't have any of that here, but these parks have, what the National Park Service does, they maintain our history and our natural beauty, and there's so much that they cover. It's really amazing that one federal department does so much. They even talk about the prehistory events and peoples. In preparation today, I made a list of all of the National Park Service battlefields and monuments I've visited throughout my lifetime. And don't worry, I won't read them all out because it's 76. I'd really enjoy seeing our country, and it's something. I've been to a lot of places around the world, but America seems to be the one place that has everything. And the National Park Service are really able custodians of our treasures. The National Park Service not only preserves American historic sites like the Chalmette Battlefield, but they also preserve the history of peoples who lived in Louisiana thousands of years before Christopher Columbus set foot in the New World. Up in Monroe, there's a place called Poverty Point. 3,000 years ago, people that came across the land bridge in the Bering Strait came to Louisiana. We have one of the oldest settlements in the New World in our state, and it's one of maybe 24 United Nations recognized sites in our state, in America, right here in Louisiana. And it's not just important, to our state; it's important to the world. So, I welcome y'all to St. Bernard. I'm glad y'all are here. I'm glad we're all going to be able to get some delicious cake in a minute. And, this is a very important day. And I just encourage you, and you're going to get these booklets at the end of the program. There's a special stamp that the National Park Service has outside. And if you go to page 3, you got a nice little part where you can put the stamp that shows the day that you were here on the 100th birthday of the National Park Service. So before you leave, make sure you do that and keep this, because this is going to be an important thing to hold on to. So thank you for coming here. I hope you have a great time, and hope we all get to have a good little party in a minute. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce you to a man who's dedicated his life to public service to the people of New Orleans. But that tradition that started of public service actually started with the national park. Errol Williams served as a park ranger all over the country, and he brought those lessons of preservation back and has been one of the fighters to make sure that these great national treasures of land, spirit, and history are preserved. Errol Williams.
Good morning, everyone. How many of you here have rode horseback? Oh, we got a lot of people riding horseback. Have you rode it for 10 hours? No. If you ride for 10 hours, what happens? No, you get a little sore in the back. So I wanted to start off with that because as a young man, I spent time with the National Park Service, okay, working in Wyoming and Montana. My job was to ride the trails of Yellowstone and make the necessary repairs to the signs and the trails that would, sometimes trees would fall on the ground. We would cut those trees out so people would be able to go and enjoy the park and make it safe for them. This was the first time in my life that I'd ever been out of Louisiana. Okay, so when I left Louisiana as a kid growing up in the St. Bernard housing projects, I took a summer job working for the Forest Service. And this was the time period when I learned how to fly fish. Anybody here fly fish? Anybody go fishing? You fly fish? Okay, so when you get to appreciate it, you ride on horseback and there's nobody in the woods. You just enjoy Mother Nature. You see the trees, you see the bears, the buffaloes, the antelope, the moose. The moose is the most intriguing of all the animals because some of the stuff they run through, you can't walk through. And it's just one of those things that, as a young man, it was fascinating to me. Those things left me with one thing that I enjoyed out of life. I still fish very heavily today. I still hunt very heavily, only not for trophies, but only for food. So I enjoy what I kill. I enjoy what I catch. Today we celebrate the 100 years of the National Park Service anniversary. Our state has 5 national parks. How many people knew that? Nobody. Oh, you did? Okay, so that's great. And we have 50 National Historic Monuments in more than 1,300 historic places in our state. Unfortunately, our national parks are in trouble. Despite the importance of Louisiana's economy and our nation's and cultural heritage, years of congressional underfunding have resulted in about $12 billion in needed structural repairs, including $12 million here in Louisiana. You may not see the full impact today, but we must preserve the parks for our future generations so that you can go through the parks. My children, I have 2 daughters. They have been to at least 7 of the national parks. And you know what they do at every park they go? They get a stamp saying that they've been there. So that's one of the things that they cherish, because if they go somewhere and there's a national park, they will rent a car just to go visit the national park to enjoy the countryside, to see things that we don't see in the New Orleans area. We see, as I learned from back then, the guys in Montana and Wyoming could not believe that we live somewhere where everything is flat. So you don't have no hills? I said, no, in Louisiana, maybe in what you call it, St. Francisville, we got some hills. I said, but basically everything is flat. Up there, nothing's flat. Only in the meadow areas when you come on up the mountains and you go on the horseback and you see the meadowlands. That's where it's flat at. I would like to say, as we celebrate the 100-year anniversary, okay, I'm asking our congressional delegation to support permanent funding for our national parks so we can repair the backlogs of properties that have been damaged. It is important to every citizen, especially those of Louisiana who share such a great love for doing the outdoors. How many of you like to fish? Everybody. Oh, that's great. How many people caught big fish? How many people caught little fish? That's what the national park's all about. Okay, being able to enjoy catching rainbow cutthroat, walleye, okay, and brown trout, and being able to do the most important thing. Fishing is great, and catching the fish is fun, but eating is so much better. Thank y'all.
And I'd like to introduce another distinguished visitor. She is the St. Bernard Councilman at Large East, speaking for the parish and in defense of the national parks, Carrie Gowling.
Hi, everybody. As he said, I am the council chair here in St. Bernard, and I am so proud to represent the Chalmette Battlefield, and I am honored to have all of y'all here with us today, joining us for this event. So thank y'all all for coming. You got a great little history lesson here today. Not everyone knows that the Battle of New Orleans was fought right here in Chalmette. So now you know that, and you can go home and share that with all your family and friends. The Chalmette Battlefield is where one of the most important battles in American history took place. It's one of the most important battles that Americans had for their freedom, and it took place right here where y'all are sitting today. St. Bernard Parish remembers, and we're proud of that history. So much that if you look at our parish symbol, you can see the monument that's right outside the door, and the cannons are right on our parish symbol, so that we can remember and celebrate our history. This field's importance to St. Bernard and the greater New Orleans area is more than just history. The Louisiana National Park sites, including the Chalmette Battlefield, generate $28 million for tourism. That's tens of thousands of jobs produced from parks just like this one. I'm honored to represent the Chalmette Battlefield, and I'm so grateful that all of you came out here today to celebrate with us. Happy birthday to our national parks.
Whereas America's national park system has become America's best idea, and whereas the national park system serves as living classrooms for future generations, therefore be it resolved that the city of New Orleans strongly encourages Congress to address maintenance needs in America's national park system. Fix our parks!
The biggest issue is the $12 billion deficit across the national park system. It's very important that we've worked to make sure that that's covered, that our parks stay in the condition that they're currently in, and that they're made available for our future generations, and that they're kept, maintained and open to our children to be able to experience their history and to see what beautiful history and culture we have here in St. Bernard and across the nation with our parks.
It is a challenging situation, perhaps the greatest challenge the park system has had in its 100-year history, a $12 billion deficit. And in practical terms, it is not like, oh, we need a coat of paint. We're talking about hiking trails in major parks being rendered unusable so people cannot see them. We're talking about roads being potholes so people can't go. We're talking about historic sites threatening closure because they can't be maintained. We're talking about a major part of our history. And $12 billion, by some argument, is what the federal government uses on paper clips. So we're talking about a comparatively small group of money when you're talking a $2 trillion budget. And yet something so critical, so important, so elemental to who we are as Americans, that it enjoys bipartisan support, but not a whole lot of people arguing in its favor.
Our parks have been a little bit put to the back of the priority list, and they're major important assets, especially for smaller communities like this that share and help promote the history and the culture of the region.
They're seeking additional funds to do maintenance work. I know that there's a backlog of repairs. I'm sure they're also looking to acquire other properties that are of a historic nature before they could potentially get turned commercialized and lost. If you go to the Fredericksburg battlefield in Virginia, you go where one of the most important battles of the Civil War, right in the spot where you had the climax of the battle is you have housing developments there. That's a very important field that's unfortunately been lost. And we need to do a better job preserving our history and also working on how we interpret the history. That way future generations have a better appreciation of what happened on these sites.
I just don't think it's a priority to the politicians right now. They don't understand the importance and the engagement of the citizens of the United States and tourists from abroad to really understand the history of the regions throughout the country.
The easiest way for us to get our parks funded is to let our legislature know how important they are to us. We need to make sure that the funding keeps coming to our Park Service, that they're understood how important the tourism dollars are to our economy and to the quality of life we have here in St. Bernard.
The first active way is to call your member of Congress, to send a letter to the White House to argue, please restore and augment funding for the National Park System. Second is to visit and get a National Park access card. Many of the parks, like Chalmette Battlefield, are free, as are Great Smoky Mountains National Park and many others. But to go to most of the national park, there's a nominal fee. However, here's the secret. For $80 or so, families can visit all the national parks for a year. It's the greatest way. Go on vacation to the parks and also say thank you to the rangers of the parks. And the reason I say that is these are people who work for very low pay and against extraordinary challenges in these deficits. They are sort of the secular priesthood who keep the temples of our history and our natural beauty alive. And the best way you can to help them, besides helping the lobby to save these parks, to send a letter, make a phone call, is to simply say to your park ranger, thank you for being there for us. And I'm not a park ranger. I'm somebody who's watched the incredible work they do and is eternally thankful for it.
It's a great impact. I believe the number is around $27 million a year of impact that the national parks have. And it's just, for us in St. Bernard, it's something that our residents value and enjoy on a daily basis. So it serves two purposes for us here in Chalmette.
It produces a lot of money for our city. This is New Orleans is a cultural city where a lot of tourism is one of our vital products. We don't manufacture a whole lot here, but we bring a lot of tourists here. They come here to have a good time, and while they're here, they don't just visit Bourbon Street as most people think. They also visit the parks around and the historic, what they call it, mansions that exist around our state.
The most important thing that people don't realize is that the Battle of New Orleans was fought actually right here in Chalmette. That's something that, an important part of our history that we value and we try to promote and make known as much as possible here in St. Bernard.
If you look behind you, you'll see all the people who are here at Chalmette Battlefield, just enjoying the history of how our country became free.
I have watched the national park system change people's lives. I've watched kids from inner cities get full perspectives in nature. I've watched those who don't know our history walk in and be wondrous. And I've experienced it personally from all angles. Obviously from the uniform, and I'm portraying my ancestor, Jacques-Philippe Villeray, who fought here on the fields of Chalmette as the Major General of the Louisiana militia. But I also enjoy the national park system from a natural standpoint. In the last year, I have hiked the Spike Lock Trail in Glacier National Park in Montana, part of the Appalachian Trail through the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and others. And I've seen firsthand how much trouble it is to maintain this by people and how we're falling further and further behind, because you can do a lot of work, but when you get fewer and fewer people to keep the branches going and all this, basically you're closing off the national parks to the people that might need it most.
National parks are our national treasure. England's got crowns and jewelry and scepters. Well, our riches are our national parks. Yellowstone is like no other place on earth. It is a beautiful site in terms of the land, but it's also wonderful because of the very abundant nature there. And a lot of people, you don't have to go out the country to see some really incredible things.
Well, I'd like everybody to consider coming out to the Chalmette Battlefield or the Jean Lafitte National Parks and enjoy the area.
I just hope y'all come out and enjoy your parks, and happy birthday to our national parks here.
Just ask Congress to find a way to help us get out of the hole. Okay, it may cost a little more in taxes since I do this for a living. Okay, maybe we have to get a little more out of the public in order to be able to preserve the history of our country.
There is a donation box inside, and feel free to drop money freely into that. But I think making it a priority with our politicians and local leaders all the way up to the federal government makes it important and become a priority.
You can go to the websites for the national parks, nationalparksystem.gov, and further, you can look on the web and Google your local national park. What I encourage people to do is, they'd be amazed how many national parks are near them and they have no idea. Google, national parks, Louisiana or Oregon or Michigan, wherever you are, and take your kids, take your nieces and nephews if you don't have kids, take whatever, and go see them. spend a weekend there, spend a day there, hike the trails, see how incredible they are, but also that they may need a helping hand. Vote with your feet as well as your pen and your pocketbook.